We were surrounded by beautiful snow-capped mountains, their tips lost in the clouds above them. Tall evergreen trees from my birthday dream created a barrier between nature and industry. No matter what I saw out here, it was always surreal. A light breeze danced across my face as I breathed in deeply. Any residual bad feelings I had earlier dissipated in the air, and the tension I was carrying in my shoulders relaxed. The sun dipped in the sky, leaving pink and purple swirls mixed with light blues in its wake. I felt at peace for the first time in a week. Eden shook her head. As you know, you have your second test of powers ahead of you. Normally, there would be a longer period between tests, but we just don't have that kind of time anymore. I took a deep breath, readying myself for the battle ahead. You'll be tested on your breed powers, fertility, healing, and of course, weather. She paused, as if waiting for a reaction from me. When I didn't reply, she said, "If you're ready, we'll start with the healing. Come with me." Wow, never had anything this good when I was a teen. All we had to read was a Hobbit.
Nothing as delightful to see when you witness a young adult put down that cell phone and pick up a good book. Now you know the power of some good literature for any teen to give up trolling the social media sites just to get lost in a great story. That lure of wanting to know what surprises happen on every page. What mysteries there is to behold in another chapter. And thus the hours pass and they find themselves lost in a book they just can't put down. We've all had that experience once or twice in our lives, but it has to be some great storytellers out there who could take pen to paper to create the magic that our imagination creates from the pages they fill.
On this edition, we're going to visit two extraordinary ladies that partner together to create two books of the Breed Amulet series. These two ladies are more than just literary partners. They're a mother and daughter writing team from right here in Denville. Leslie and Janice Sommers are creating some fantastic books for young adults that are finding it hard to put down. And they continue with a follow-up third novel later this year and even more projects to come. Their story coming up on this edition, Spotlight Denville.
Earlier this year, I had a chance to talk with the authoring team of Leslie and Janice Sommers. This dynamic mother and daughter team have co-written two young adult fantasy novels with a third due out before year's end. The Breed Amulet series of books tells the story of senior high school teen Bridget McNamara, who finds herself entangled in mysterious circumstances looking for an amulet that belonged to an ancient relative from Scotland. There's romance, coming-of-age issues, mystery, magic, and adventure. Leslie and Janice have been writing for 13 years now, and they've been proven to be a writing team to be reckoned with. It's not often you come across a mother and daughter who collaborate so well in such a deep creative process to produce not one book, but three, with more to come. I was invited to their home where I had a chance to witness this imaginative duo at work. Looking over a map of Scotland as they plan the flow of their next story, they seemed to work seamlessly, crafting the first draft of their third novel in the Breed Amulet series. But with all great creative teams, there can be differences, and other times, it just clicks together.
The problem we had was the book is about a teenage girl. It's been a couple of years since I was a teenage girl, so I'll say, gee, does she, they don't do that. And she'll say, no, Mom, they do. Don't worry about it, they do. And I defer to her. There are some things that I'll say, this doesn't make sense, and she'll read it and go, you're right, we need to change this, and we'll discuss how it goes. But there are times that I'm overruled.
Oh, a lot.
It's okay.
Well, she doesn't have the perspective of a teenager anymore. And while I may not either, I read a lot of the YA books, and we have teenagers, and I have more teenagers in my life than you do.
Yeah.
So I check in with them. I sometimes will be like, hey, is this still a thing? Is this what you do now? And they'll be like,
No.
Like,
Yeah.
so that's the reason why I will overrule her. So we had a plot hole for book 2 when we were writing it that we didn't realize we had until I was doing research for something else, and all of a sudden she was on her way home from work, and I called her and I was like, this is what we had to solve this, and we didn't even know, and this is gonna work so much better. And she was so excited. I mean, like, we were on the phone until she pulled in the driveway. We hung up the phone, she came in, we picked up the conversation, we talked, and we wrote during dinner. I mean, it was like,
We were on fire.
yeah, it was really exciting. It just clicked for both of us, and we just ran with it for hours, and we finished book 2 that way.
I had a chance to sit down and ask Leslie and Janice how their partnership and the inspiration for these wonderful books began.
That's her story.
That's my story.
That's her story because she started
So I started the novel first, and I kept running to my mom and saying, like, so should we have our character Bridget do this, or what if she does this, or how about that? And it became just so much where I was bouncing ideas off of her that halfway through I was like, why don't you just join, because at this point you co-wrote this book with me. And she was like, okay. And that's just how succinct it was. It was that quick. There was no complications. Oh, I started writing this back in like 2011, 2012. And then the book was finished, the first book was finished within the first year. So we were done about, I think like 2013. 2013. And then we were trying to get it published with a traditional publisher, but that wasn't working in our favor. We spent 10 years talking to agents, right? Editors,
agents.
We were submitting directly to the publishers and nothing was working, and everyone said no. And then we went to the Brooklyn Book Festival, and I ran into a publisher who was saying, we're looking for unpublished manuscripts. And I was like, oh great, so I signed up. And it turns out that they were a vanity publisher, but we didn't know that at the time. And they didn't offer us a developmental editor. So we went back to the Brooklyn Book Festival. Yes, our cat Simba. We went back to the Brooklyn Book Festival, and you found the editor booth, right?
I was walking, we were on either side, and I happened to see, it said something about editors, freelance editors or something, and I stopped and started talking to her, and then she popped over. And we found this lovely woman.
Oh yeah, Alexa. She's just the best. She
Yeah.
gets a shout out in all of her books because she's so great. So that's how long this book has been taking for The Breed Reborn, for the first one to take to be published. We were originally published with the first publisher in 2020, and then they didn't handle the book sales very well, and they didn't handle anything correctly, so we left them, and we decided that we were going to find a new publisher, which we did, and we're now with Four Horsemen Publications, and we really like working with them. We say that the book is a family affair because Mom and I wrote it, but my dad was the inspiration behind it. My dad passed away almost 9 years ago this upcoming August, and he was hard of hearing. So we live behind the train station, and if you have the windows open in the summer, you hear the train and you hear nothing else. So we have learned that you have to pause.
You have to pause the conversation until the train. And if it's a day thing, it's every 15 minutes because the commuter train.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you get a freight train, but not very often. But mostly it's commuter trains at 4 o'clock till 7 o'clock.
But the point is that my father, who is a little hard of hearing, didn't hear something correctly because the train started coming as the sentence was spoken, so we misunderstood it. So I was washing dishes, he was talking with my mom, and he got really angry. And the angrier he got, the cloud coverage went and the cloud came over and covered the sun. So it was sunny and bright, and all of a sudden it was really dark out. And I was like, oh, okay, just thinking that was normal. And then the train passed, my mom explained what she said, and he calmed down and went, oh, okay, I didn't hear you right. And he was fine. As his mood changed and he went back to being calm, the cloud moved away and the sun came out, and I went, okay. I mean, I know he can't control the weather, but like, what if he could? And that I finished the dishes and sat down and wrote the prologue in the first chapter that night. So it was just a sudden spark of inspiration.
It's a story about a girl from New Jersey who finds out she is descended from Scottish weather gods. And not only that, she finds out she's a seeker. She has to find the amulet that helps control the weather. And before the other fraction that's looking for their, she's looking for it and someone else is looking for it too, and she has to find it for the other person. And there's the love interest, she's a teenager, she's in high school, there's that, teenage angst with first love and, all of that.
There's star-crossed lovers.
Yeah.
So the main male character, who Bridget, our female main character, falls for, he's part of the other side of the family, and they fall for each other, even though the two sides of the family hate each other. Bridget doesn't know that. She has no idea. She's kind of in the dark, and that's really what it is. But her side of the family, Breed's side of the family, wants to find the amulet before Beer's side of the family does. Simba likes to make an appearance in all of our interviews.
He just walks through.
Right through. He doesn't want to be touched by anybody right now. Anyway, because the Beer side of the family, as far as Bridget knows in book 1, they just want to plunge the world into eternal winter. And obviously, we don't want that.
But there is more to consider when brainstorming a new book. There is promotion of the first 2 novels that are already out making a mark in the young adult literary world. Leslie and Janice travel across the country, connecting with fans at various conventions and events who are equally excited about the Breed Amulet series.
I'll listen to the cadence of it, and I'll listen to how they're phrasing things, and I'll think, is that something I can apply to my characters? Is it going to be like regional to that character? Like my character is from New York, I'm not writing somebody who's got like a Minnesotan accent or something like that.
Will help.
Okay.
I don't, in our collaboration, I do not write dialogue. We discuss dialogue, and she writes it. So
That helps too.
But it's not easy writing such young adult novels. There's a number of stumbling blocks along the way that can hinder the creative process. With determination and some creative networking, one never knows.
Well, in our case, the contract said either the publisher or us could bow out. There was no repercussions, and that's the way the contract was written. So all we did was waited till we got another publisher and then bowed out from the original publisher because they weren't doing anything. Every time we called them for some reasons or something, we got a new person, they left, or they were fired, or this was happening or that was happening, and it just, we couldn't get any meaningful feedback of what was happening with the book. So we discussed it and said, we're done. And we just told them, we're done.
They also broke contract. They told us that they would give us they would give us interviews on radio shows and TV shows and Amazon Lives and all these things, and nothing ever happened. I was the one booking everything, and she was the one who was selling it, and they weren't doing anything. And our argument to them was, you're breaking the contract. You said you would get all these things, and they were like, well, it's COVID, we can't do anything. And I was like, I work for a company where we have normally in live meetings, but now we're switching everything over to Zoom, so why can't you do Zoom meetings? Almost every interview after that for 2 years was a Zoom interview of some capacity. So it became the new norm, and they just dropped the ball all the way through. So we were definitely not going back with them. So as Mom said, we were able to break contract and end it, and then we found another publisher. That was a fun journey. I always read YA books. I sold young adult books. I read them, I write them. It always just made sense for me. It was natural for me to want to write from that perspective. Fantasy, I always read fantasy books. And then from the mythology aspect, I wanted to know what God in some kind of religion that would, especially a polytheistic religion, who would control the weather. And Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson series had just come out, and I didn't want to be too carbon copy, so I didn't want to go near the Greek stuff, so I stayed away from it. He also had another series, Egyptology-based stuff, and I didn't want that involved. And so I just felt like Scottish mythology and the Druids were kind of quiet. They weren't so wildly popular in popular media, so in the media. So I thought that would be a fun way to go, and I looked and I happened to see that Breed and Bera were both considered weather goddesses in their own right in some capacity. There was one myth that I found where they actually crossed over, and we kind of sourced our material from that, and one thing led to another, and I just decided to reimagine those myths and make them more modern day and kind of bring it up to the 21st century. Two books are out right now. We have the third book, the novellas with the publishers, and we're working on the third book of the series.
We're finishing up the third book. You have this series, and then we have another series in the works.
Right, but the conception of that. So you came up with, so this book was my idea. The next series is your idea.
Yeah.
We talk about it, and then I execute the writing. I do the actual writing of it, but she's just as heavily involved with that. Once we we discuss the plot line, we discuss the details and what we want to do, and we work it out. Once the manuscript is done and ready, we send it to the editor. She then edits it and then sends it back to us. We go through the changes and we address anything that she has a question about. Then once that's done, sometimes we have second round edits with her, sometimes we don't. Usually we do these days. We want to be really sure that the books are, nice and tight and they make sense and the details are all taken care of correctly. And then from there, we formulate it how the publisher wants it. We fill out information that they ask for, and then we submit it to them. They go through their edits of it. They're not developmental necessarily. They're more grammatical, and sometimes they're a little like, hey, this doesn't make sense. But often, since we've gone through 2 or 3 rounds of editing with our content editor, they don't usually have that for us. Then from there, we go through the typesets and we give the approvals. If there's anything that needs to be changed, we tell them about it, they change it, they wrap it up a nice little bow, and they send it off to be printed. And then they take care of it. After that, there's a cover design that we approve. They tell us the publication schedule. So in 22, we had to give the first book over to them by September 30th, I think. And then the first book came out on February 23rd, 2023. At that point, we were already handing over our second book, and then the second book came out October 16th last year, 2023. So we just handed over the novella, and now we'll learn what the new publication date is.
I guess we're an unusual writing duo, mother and daughter.
Yeah, we're an anomaly.
Yeah, we're an anomaly.
So we're very exciting.
We're very excited.
It's like a two-headed animal.
Yeah, they're very excited about it. We can't understand it, but
We should be on a science network and study about science.
It sounds like Leslie and Janice have a real recipe for success. We wish them both all the best and looking forward to some great releases from them in the future. We certainly want to thank them for spending some time talking with us today. You can find links and more information about their books below. Join us again for another edition of Spotlight Denville. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button below and stay up with everything from Denville Community Media. I'm Dana Foreman, and I hope to see you around town.